All right, so welcome then to our painting project. And this month we are painting, we're continuing our virtual trip around the world. And we're now in the states of the Southwest USA. And we decided by our voting, our poll, to paint this Colorado scene with a typical iconic landscape here with the mesas and the buttes and the red rock and the Colorado River meandering its way through the scene. So a big part of the whole project, the monthly project exercise, is that hopefully you all have a go, and especially those of you on a critique level on Patreon, you get to email me a photo of your painting and I give you in return a little video, a short video critique with my comments on how well you did. So I'm going to go through this painting then, demonstration step by step with you, trying to give as much commentary along the way. Now, let me talk you through the scene. We've got, from a composition point of view, that's the first thing I look at, composition. Looking at this photo, what could I adjust? What needs to be moved? Well, I think that the main thing is deciding on the position of the horizon. So we don't want it, of course, we don't want it right in the middle. If you want to make more of a feature of the sky, then you lower the horizon. I think in David's photo, the horizon is about right. We've just got a small slither of sky at the top of our scene. And then next to decision, the placement of the mesas, and the mountains framing the scene left and right, and then that river winding its way and coming towards us. And I think the river is flowing towards us, so it's going out towards that bottom left-hand corner. Now, I think the position of the mesas is about right in the scene. Look at the difference in the height of them as well. Well, we've got a kind of mesa or a butte there in the background, and then the first real sort of mesa we see is this one here with the flat top, the scarp vertical sides, and then that almost 45-degree angle. So that's quite a good position for that one. Then slightly higher, we've got the nearest one, similar kind of profile, the top part of it, that top band with these vertical scarps, these gouges, vertical gouges, and then the slope, that 45-degree slope. We've got some horizontals, some faint horizontals just appearing in the scene here and there. And then coming down, this kind of scree slope, the rubble, coming down to a flattish valley bottom, and then we hit the river itself. We've got lots of vegetation in the valley and near the river, all sorts of greens. We've got, well, there's a yellow green there, more like a pale olive green in areas, the tree there, the grassy bits there, a lighter green here, lots of different shades of green. On the left-hand bank, this is quite nice because I guess over to the left, there's another mesa, and there's this slope here coming down, this 45-degree slope coming down to the river. But right at the base of the river, it evens out and it levels out, and we've got that a little bit of a rubble beach, and again some sparse vegetation. But right on the end of this sort of spit, this bend in the river, we've got this taller vegetation, shrubs, small trees, but they're quite nice because they kind of connect that left-hand side with the far side. So we see the river, and then it disappears, and then we can see little bits of it reappearing, and then It goes over to the left, and then I guess it goes around another bend. It's winding its way up through the landscape. So I think that's quite nice there. In the on the far side of the bank, what may look like army barracks is not. It's a posh hotel, David informs me. So apologies to the hotel over there. That's a posh hotel, okay? Quite a nice location by the riverbank. I guess they can hear the meandering of the river as they waft off to sleep. Bottom right-hand corner. What do we do down here? Well, there are these boulders, well, the two large boulders in the river. I think they catch my eye too much, so I'm going to remove those from the scene. We'll imagine they've been washed away in a winter storm, so they're not going to be there in my composition. There's also a soft shadow of a cloud cast away, cloud, or maybe there's another mesa behind us, not sure, but there's this soft cloud. There's the outline there, hits the far side of the bank, wanders over to those trees, and then I guess that bit of it over there, it goes back over the right hand side. I'm going to imagine that shadow's not there. So keep the river fairly light compared to the surroundings. And in this bottom right hand corner, there's all these shrubs, again, different shades of green. Some of these shrubs have got flowers on them. There's a sort of more of a, there's more of a spiky thing here as well. So different vegetation to contend with. And I'm going to have a figure in this bottom right-hand corner. And again, that figure, like a tree on the far side, it'll serve to connect that right-hand side to the far side of the bank, the far side of the river, and also serve as a little bit of extra interest and maybe some idea of the scale of this right-hand side here. So I'm going to take the liberty of placing a figure on that right-hand side. So that's the scene. We've got to deal with depth. The distant mesa has got to be quite light in value, a cool red. And then as we come closer, those reds get more vibrant and stronger. Then we've got the greens. We've got a nice color contrast with the blue of the sky against the reds. And then the river itself, well, the river, it's got a kind of a light bluish reflection of the sky. But then over on that left-hand side here, looks a bit sort of not very clear water, a little bit sort of silty, greeny, brown, that sort of color, some silt being taken down the river. But think about those values, all right, and trying to push things back. Also on the river, we need to think about a little bit about the movement in that river as well. Some little gentle, soft waves. There's a little bit of disturbance in the water here, where it's going over some boulders just below the surface. Yes, so lots of things to contend with, and I'll describe as I go through little bits of details that I might put into the scene. Let me go to my planning sketch then and take you through that. All right, back to me. And as I normally do on these demonstrations, is just plan for you my thoughts on my approach with the composition. So you can see here the rough outline of the various shapes, the various objects we're dealing with. These two mesas here, the left-hand slope, the right-hand slope. These numbers represent my planned approach. So number one will be the sky. Well, number one will be the initial wash, pretty much covering the whole scene. but concentrating on getting the sky right and the base color, the base wash for the water, the river. Then I'm going to have to let that dry a little bit. I might speed up things with a hairdryer for you. But number two, then we're coming forwards to us now. So number two, that distant mesa, and then number three, the background mesa, the more prominent mesa, and then we've got our slopes, left-hand slope with the vegetation, and then the right-hand slope. A lot of a much warmer red, but then coming down to lighter greens, and then the shoreline. Number six will be the bottom right-hand corner where all of those rounded shrubs are. Here's my figure with an appropriate hat on, looking sort of into the scene, hopefully, but trying to think about the angle of that figure, the pose of that figure, trying to make them look like they're sort of perched on this slope here, or fairly steepish slope. Number seven will be details, just little bits of, with a smaller brush, just little bits of details to pull things together, maybe touching up the distant mesas there to give them a little bit more form, little blobs of foliage all over the place and rocks, just to pull things together. So that's the plan. I might come back to that as I go through. Let me describe my materials for you then before I start proper. Paper-wise, this is Saunders Waterford watercolor paper. Always try and use good quality paper like Saunders. This is 100% cotton paper, cold pressed, 15 inches by 11 inches. Paints are by Mark Jackman in the UK, Jackman's Art Materials. I've got my normal palette of colours, no changes here. Neutral tint, burnt umber, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, spring green, viridian green, cobalt green. That might be quite useful for some of the olive green trees in the scene. Cerulean blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson. Again, we can be using that in a very conservative way for some of the distant hills. And then a cadmium red, that's going to be used quite a lot. The English oxide or light red, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow, lavender, quinacridone gold, a lemon yellow gouache, and a white gouache. Brushes wise, well, most of the painting will be done with my brush at the moment, a Tintoretto mop brush, series 1407, more on that in a minute. But let's get down the initial drawing first. Pretty much following my ideas with my planning sketch, all right? I will start with and I'll draw fairly lightly first of all, just in case I change my mind, but the left-hand side, and it's that almost a 45-degree slope, but it does get less steep as we come down to the bottom. So right about there, as it comes down. Now, in the distance, we've got the distant mesa and a flattish top, although this one's got a little bit of a dome. It sort of rises a little bit, ever so slightly in the middle, and then over to the right-hand side, near as much vertical scarps, these sides to the mesa. And now it does level off over here, but I'm going to have it going down that 45-degree angle. Coming closer towards us, we've got the nearby mesa and the left-hand side of it, the flattish top, over to the right-hand side. Now this one almost dips down in the middle a little bit. So that one's sort of a bit like that, but this one dips down a little bit in the middle. About a third of the way along, there's a ridge that sort of comes out towards us, and it's casting a shadow. I should have said the light, I think, is coming from the right-hand side. So we've got shadows being cast that way. Just rub out that angle there. So that goes down like that. The left-hand side is, I think, closer to us. So that's why I've just gone in front of that slope there. Now, the right-hand slope starts off very gently, and then the gradient increases. Something like that. The sides of the river now, and starting in the distance, the bend, the far bend, coming to this nearby bank, sorry, the left-hand side of the river, which has got that pebbly beach and then a little inlet and this sort of bit of land that comes out on that bend with some trees and shrubs on it, but they are connecting the left-hand side of the river to the right-hand side. Now, just continuing on the right-hand side of the river, far side, angling down, and we've got various shrubs over on that right-hand side. Figure, which is going to be around about here. And I want the figure to be, so standing here, but connecting the top of the figure, connecting with the far side. So a hat for that figure, a torso, shoulders at a slight angle. I'm doing some cross hatching here just to make it stand out. As Jean pointed out, you'd have to wear some stout boots to protect yourself from snake bites and so on. Maybe the feet is hidden by more vegetation, but a figure there looking into the scene. Right, some extra lines on the left-hand side. There's some bands of foliage coming down from the left-hand side. Now, the lines of foliage, the lines of trees, they are, even though we're on a bit of a slope here, they're almost horizontal. So there's a line there, and there's another line just here before the bend, and then trees above that, trees here. The far side of the river has some trees as well, and then in amongst the grounds of this hotel, more trees dotted around. Some horizontal lines that we can see as well that might be to do with a hotel, but they're quite nice to have those in as well, and they extend over to the right hand side. So a darker red, and then we come the land levels out, so we go to like a lighter green down to the side of the river. Right, let's just strengthen up some of these lines then, just so that you can see what is going on here. So that's my outline of the trees on that bend. The far side of the river. And then these various rounded shapes of foliage, maybe some rocks coming out from the right hand side, but I'm not putting those two, there's two boulders here in the source photo. I'm not bothering with those. Strengthen up that side. Have I got my mesas correct? Make sure that I've got the outline looking all right. You might want to just put an indication of a few little vertical marks there on the scarp sides, and then some of these horizontals as well. And that is pretty much it from my drawing point of view. Keep it fairly simple, no real details, but trying to get the composition right, especially the position of the two mesas. So the distant one lower than the nearest one, and then trying to get the slope of the sides on the left-hand side, that right-hand side, the wood there, the bottom right-hand side, just coming in, not too much detail, but my important figure there. Looking over across the landscape. Well, let me just see if there's any questions. Okay. John, is that a Bigfoot on the bank in your sketch? Possibly. Yeah, keep an eye out for Bigfoot. Thanks so much, John. Right. I don't think there's any more questions. Well, let's get to the all-important painting then. Oh, Sushmit is asking, I've seen this question in chat. Is neutral tint the same as Payne's grey? It's similar. It's close. Neutral tint is going to be, I would call it more of a charcoaly grey, whereas Payne's grey is more of a bluer grey. And in fact, you could use, the way you would use Payne's grey would be similar to neutral tint. And I have actually used Payne's grey in the past. many years ago, but just swapped over to neutral tint. It's a good kind of mix, a good dark pigment to mix with other colors to get those instant darks. If I could describe it that way, Sushmit. Right, painting then. Starting with, back to the plan, covering most of the scene, sky and river, covering, getting in a base layer of paint. There's the only reason I might leave something out if there was a prominent object or something that was very light or very white, which there isn't in this scene. So I'm going to be painting over pretty much the whole scene here. Mop brush then, and thinking about the color of the sky, simple sky. There are clouds in the composition, but I'm going to keep it fairly straightforward with a light mixture of cerulean blue and cobalt blue. So cerulean and cobalt. In fact, not as much as that. A little bit of cobalt. And then lay it down. I could go a little bit darker on the left-hand side because that is furthest away from the source, or it could go a little bit lighter there. I'm adding in more water on that left-hand side. Just make it a little bit more intense in that top left corner. Coming down, I can now just add in a little bit of blue for that water there and a base layer of something warm for the mountains. This is just something to cover up the paper. So I've just picked up a little bit of cadmium red here. And now go back to a cooler color for the beach show, which I will go over again. Those trees. And the water itself, the river. Fairly light in the distance. Now I might add in a little bit of cobalt green to this, a little bit of a cool green. And a little bit of burnt sienna to get that feeling of the silt coming down the river. Then over to the right-hand side, bottom right corner. bottom right corner, and in this bottom right hand corner, something just a light green, again, just to cover up the paper. I just picked up my spring green, but a very weak wash of that spring green. And that is pretty much it for the first wash. So I'm going to now get my hairdryer out to speed up the drying process for you. And it's actually drying quite nicely already, so this shouldn't take too long. Now, my microphone should cut out, but just in case it doesn't, I'll give you a countdown. 3, 2, 1. All right, so this should be nice and dry now, which it is. Still sticking with the mop brush, I'm now starting the background and gradually coming forwards with that little bit of a small butte or a small mesa just there, and then this more distant one. Something cool then, and a little bit of alizarin crimson and a little bit of cobalt blue. Honestly, something very light, but it's got to be darker than the sky in value. So something like that. Yeah, that should be right. Now, next one coming towards us, a little bit warmer. So a bit of light red. Bit of light red, maybe a bit more alizarin crimson. Light red, alizarin crimson. In fact, the cool red is a cooler red at the top, and then as we come down the mesa onto the slopes, it gets like a warmer color. Almost, I feel like I could be adding in some cadmium orange into the mix, possibly. But let's just stick with this combination for now. A little bit of alizarin crimson, a little bit of light red. And you could, if you want to be creative, you could push the colors a lot more than I am for your version. Right, little test here. I think that's okay. Remember, the paints are going to dry a little bit lighter. There we are. Now, as I come down, a little bit more of this light red in the mix, I think. A bit more. In fact, a little bit of cadmium red, possibly. Go warmer, a bit more intense with the reds. A bit more. Fill in that gap up to my main butte. There. And we could just, with a damp tissue, just lift out with a smooth surface. If I just dampen that tissue a bit. So damp tissue, and just, if you've gone a bit too dark, you can just very gently just lift out just a few key areas. Maybe a little bit more on that right-hand side because the light's coming from that right. There, not too much, don't overdo it. It is in the background. Right, main mesa. Similar colors here, starting cooler red at the top, then come warmer down through the middle of the structure and maybe a little bit lighter, warmer towards the bottom. Right. Alizarin crimson. Check my brush. Alizarin crimson. Make sure I cover up my pencil marks. So this one dips a little bit in the middle, and then we rise slightly to the right-hand side. It's not a perfectly flat top. There's a few little bumps and rises along the way. Right, a bit more alizarin crimson, not too much. Of course, alizarin crimson is quite a strong sort of staining color, so you've got to get it a bit difficult to wash it off or lift it off if you've overdone it. There we are, and now warmer red. Back to my light red. Maybe a bit of cadmium orange, tiny bit of cadmium orange for the slopes. So pick up a bit of blue to go a bit cooler in places. Right, down to the base, and this is where we go a little bit lighter, maybe a bit of cadmium orange at the base of this one. Pick a bit of water to go a little bit lighter. And then up against the edge of the distant mesa. There. That should be all right. Now, left-hand side is a lot more saturated in color, deeper red, some oranges in there as well. So let's go with that theme. Orange, cadmium orange, my light red, bit of cadmium red as well, and need to go darker than that. Cadmium red. Gradually getting less steep as I come down to the bottom. And I need to transition into a green now for the lower part of the slopes. But first of all, let's get in the riverbank first with that sort of stony color. So I'm using a bit of cerulean blue, a bit of burnt sienna. See if I can get that. That might be a bit too dark. A bit more burnt sienna. This is a bit like our little stony beach that we had for the Alaska scene last month. So a little bit of a stony beach. Left a few little bits of the paper unpainted. A little bit of the beach appearing there, just on the other side of the shrubs. Now, I need a lighter green for the vegetation at the bottom of the hill here. I will go in deeper with some greens shortly, but this is just a base color for some of the vegetation. Continuing on those mountains down to the water's edge. And then this flattens out. There's little bits of yellow ochre in this as well. Maybe some grasses that have dried a little bit. And there's a band of vegetation here. Now that too looks like it's gone a little bit dry in places, so just adding in a little bit of yellow ochre. We'll go stronger on this doorly. This is just like a second layer. And it's doing lots of lovely things. There's little blooms appearing and cauliflowers, which is good. Great to create those sort of natural shapes of trees and a base color for the trees here. Stick with a viridian green and a little bit of spring green, viridian green, just to cover the paper. There we are. Right-hand side now, and then I'll just pause to see if there's any questions. So right-hand side. In some ways, it's stronger than that. I can see more orange over there than on that left-hand side. Let's just wash out my brush. And yeah, over on the top right corner here, it's really quite bright. So very strong mix of cadmium orange, cadmium red, and is that strong enough? Maybe a bit more cadmium orange. There's a slither of orange there. And then we go darker, cooler. Let's add in alizarin crimson, a little bit of burnt sienna. Yeah, a bit more alizarin crimson. Perhaps a tiny bit of a warm red like ultra blue. Yeah. Meet with that cadmium orange, get a little bit of a soft edge. Now we continue over to the left-hand side. And now I need to add in some green like I did here, a base color for the lighter greens that we see on that far side. Mixing my greens up here. I think I need more mixing wells. Left-hand side, just on that bend. Connect with that darker red and down to the side of the river. Over the figure, because that's going to be darker. Here we go. That's that right-hand side. Those main colours done. I've obviously got to add form to the left and the right with those darker greens to create the shapes of the little trees, the stronger horizontals as well. There looks like almost like an orange line that goes through the middle there. Might get that in shortly. But a lot of greenery up there where it's sort of it goes up to the lower parts of the slope. Right. What can we do next? Well, consult my plan. We've done number 5 then. I guess we're about at the halfway point, I think, ish. I've got to, what I could do now while all of this is drying a little bit more, I could add in just a little bit more to the water, some of those lighter waves, just give a little bit of movement to the water and a sense of those reflections as well. And then I can go in with the bottom right hand corner here, accept the figure. So reflections then, and some darker values to the water. It's going to be a little bit, in the photo, it's a little bit darker than the beach over here. And I'm going to use a little bit of cobalt green, a little bit of burnt sienna, cobalt green, and with my brush now, with this mop brush, just very lightly getting some of these wave shapes. A little bit of a blue here. That's too dark. A little bit of a cooler blue color there. I'm just altering the mix now, picking up a bit more burnt sienna, going a bit warmer, where it's picking up a bit more of that darker silt. That darker silt. I'm going a bit lighter as we go into the distance, and these marks a lot thinner as well. Perhaps a little bit darker on this right hand side because we are a little bit more in the shade over here with the light coming from the right. Cobalt green, burnt sienna. Net with those bushes in the bottom right corner. go over the edge of the paper. Don't want any funny borders when I remove the tape. No, just do a little bit more here. Perhaps a bit more horizontal. And I haven't done this group of trees here, but while I'm doing the reflections, let's just put in the darker reflections of those trees. So Viridian green, a burnt umber, or a burnt sienna will do. Something dark, and starting this little inlet here, and just coming out. Very light strokes, just lightly touching the paper. Bit laborious, but takes some time getting the feeling of that far side. Might be the waters might be a little bit calmer over there. There's the river. I guess the river is coming around. Maybe it's a little bit calmer on this side. There we go. Don't overdo it. Try and keep it fresh. Again, if you think you've gone a bit too dark, then I always like using a damp tissue just to lift off here and there. But I think it's all right. Okay, let's do number back to the plan. Number 6 then. Accept the figure, because that figure I want to have completed the background where that hotel is here. Complete that background first of all before doing the figure. So the figure will be one of the last things. Right. Bottom right corner then, an assortment of greens. There's also a bit of red coming down here. Very dark alizarin crimson, and ultramarine blue. And let's continue that down to that dry. No, need to continue a bit more down there as well. Right, some greenery. Various greens. And just daub the paper, stab the paper with these different greens. We'll see what shapes we end up with, what effects we end up with, and we can try and emphasize those greens and try and create the shapes of shrubs in this bottom right corner. There. We'll add some more details in there later on. All right. We're now down to adding in more definition to those mesas and these and the vegetation as well, and the texture of the rocks, just to make them a little bit more believable and three-dimensional. I'm going to now go to a smaller brush, a smaller synthetic brush, and starting with my distant mesa and a cool shadowy color, which has got to be a blue. Well, a good blue for shadows is a cobalt blue, but we don't want to go too dark with the shadows in the distant one. So again, just test. In one small area, I think that's about right. So cobalt blue, and we've got these vertical marks on this far scarp, and alternate the thickness of some of these as well. Maybe less of them as we go over to the right. That's about okay. And then a bit warmer for some of the horizontals that sort of straddle across the slopes. And we've got a few little lines there. So it's very much like a dotted line. A bit more on that left-hand side because that's in the shade. Yeah. And if you think you've got a bit too dark, just lift off, ideally when it's a bit damp. There we go. The main mesa, we're going to go a bit darker with those shadows, but similar cool blue. Pick a bit of ultramarine blue. And just be careful not to. Just going to dry this a bit more. Hang on a second. I've dried that bottom right-hand corner just in case I smudge it accidentally. Starting from the left-hand side, just a little test just to make sure we've got the right kind of value. And there. A little bit of, in places, a bit of a dark line across the top. Very faint, not too strong. Now just continue with not too much paint on the brush as well. Not too much water. Nice and vertical with these marks. But in places, just a little bit more of a shadow, like a car shadow going out across the rest of the scarp. Now there's this bigger shadow here in the middle. And then just continue over. Random lines, don't make them too equally spaced as well. And over on the right-hand side, unlike there's a few more little crevices creating some shade. So here, there's one. And then that one goes over to the right. Now some horizontal lines. Few more on this left-hand side because that's a bit more in the shade. There we go. There's little white marks here which could make them into some object catching the light and a bit of shadow behind it. Here we go. Right, left-hand side. More rocks and then some trees on this left-hand side. Let's get that done. Now, the rocks on the left-hand side, they can be darker, and we want to get the feeling of this slope as well. So maybe some of these darker shapes they're sort of pointing in the direction of the gradient. Something dark. And then I'm going to pick up my mop brush again for doing these little shrubs and trees on that left-hand side. And a darker green, there's a lot of sort of middle value greens. So I'm going to have a stronger mix of my spring green, but mostly bridging green. Now, if the green is too vibrant, you could add a brown or a little bit of red to it. I like adding a bit of burnt umber, especially to bridging green. But keep mixing till you get a realistic color. So bridging green, tiny bit of spring green. And not too much paint on the brush. Let's get in these tree shapes. Then just in front of those trees, there's a band of cooler greens. No, greens here. A line of, looks like fairly low foliage going over to the shrubs. Perhaps I can connect here as well. A few darker blobs of greenery here and there. And then I need to go a lot darker for those trees. Now, in my photo, they're quite dark because a shadow is being cast over the scene. So I don't want to go as dark as they are in the photo, but let's imagine it's a different sort of vegetation. Brilliant green, burnt umber. And down to the water's edge. I'll strengthen that up in a minute. Bit of definition to the water's edge. Just a very faint, like I did at the top of the mesa, just a very thin line. Then a little bit of shadow at the base of these trees. Actually use a smaller brush. back to my small synthetic brush and altering blue, something dark, not too dark, and then at the base of these trees, just here and there, go a little bit darker. So down to those trees and a bit more shadow in these trees here. It's a little bit more darkness on the left-hand side with the direction of the sun. Don't put too much detail on that left-hand side, I'm saying to myself. Just a few little dots here and there for this stony beach. You could do a bit of splattering if you wanted to, but just be careful. Right, now on the far side of the bank, similar to what I was doing here, some blobs and horizontal lines. Let's get in some of this olive green. So I'm using cobalt green here. Cobalt green. And just a few little blobs. Giving myself a little bit of a horizontal there, but connecting the band of trees to that really dark red ochreish rock above it, and continue down this left-hand side. A few of these little horizontal lines. And more larger trees down here in this right-hand side. Down to the water's edge. And then another dark line there. And this dark line has got some shadow coming across it. And some more blobs for trees. More definition to the rocks above with my, back to my small synthetic brush, and the dark rocks over here, then the darker, it's not as dark a value as over on the left hand side. Ultramarine blue, bit of alizarin crimson, and maybe a horizontal. Neck with the trees. Some darker values just below. So ultramarine blue, neutral tints, some darker values for some of these trees, just the base of the trees and left hand side. Bit more definition to the side of the river and darker shadows. There, try and make it convincing, a sort of a distant grouping, random grouping of trees around this hotel. Okay, so what do I need to do now? I need to add definition to the right-hand side and my figure. Let me just see if there's any questions. No, there isn't. Right. Definition to these shrubs. Now I have my pencil outlines trying to give me a rough guide to these mounds of shrubs and foliage here. But sometimes watercolor does what it does, and it might give you a bit of a clue as regards where those shapes are better placed. For example, I've got a bit of a light splodge there, some lightness here. So I could go in just beyond that. If I had a little bit more paint on my brush, a little bit more, just kind of emphasize those shapes a bit more. Let's go in with a darker green now. Brilliant green. So there's my shape there. Shape there. And bush there. I'm using a 1/2 inch flat brush here. Should have said what brush I'm using. I could have used for this effect, could have used the flat edge of my mop brush in a similar way, just gently trying to create those shapes of the bushes and the dark shadow between them. But these shadows, they've got a hard edge and a soft edge, which is what I'm trying to do here with this sort of technique of placing my brush, that's the hard edge, and then creating that soft edge. Can go darker this left-hand side. I need to have some rocks coming out here, so let's go back to my mop brush and alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and some rocks coming out from this side of the river. And now my figure. Could use my mop brush with a good point, but let's go back to my small synthetic brush and something dark. So it's going to be darker than the background. So neutral tint, ultramarine blue. I'm almost getting a Payne's grey there with those two. Right, let's start with the hat. Now, I'm imagining this guy's got a sort of Western style hat on, of Stetson or whatever. So an oval, so his head's tilting up. So we're going to see a little bit of an oval of the brim of the hat. And then maybe just a little bit of the top of the hat. So you can see this, just a little bit of the top of the hat there. And then neck, shoulders, and then now with this figure perched on this 45-degree slope, we want to give him or her a good anchor with one leg. Well, that's going to make sure that's the left leg. And then the right leg. Sort of higher up the slope. Does this figure need to have a stick or something? No, I think it's all right. Try and connect it with, if you are putting a figure in, connect it with the right hand slope there, and then I think it's a good idea to have it connected with the far bank as well. Right, let's just do final touches to the trees, and then we're almost done. I'm just looking at the photo now for a little bit of inspiration, just to add in a bit more detail. Try and make some of this vegetation a bit more convincing. Some of these shrubs, I could just give them a bit more definition of a few lines, make them a bit more rub-like. There, I think I'm about done. Do I need a bit more definition to the water here? Just going to use a very light watery blue just to add in a bit more. Where can I do this? Let's just make a little bit of space here and make sure my brush is clean, and a bit of this cerulean blue. There, I think I'm about done. I can't think of much else to do with this one. There, maybe do I need to add a bit more definition to that beach? It looks a bit plain. Some, maybe some reddish rocks. Want to try and make it look convincing as a sort of beach, not a wall. Oops. Just a few more little blobs. I think I am done. Not sure about this guy's hat, but it's all right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm very much looking forward to seeing all of your efforts on Patreon, and those of you on a critique level seeing an image of your paintings as well, so I can give a critique back to you. More details on that